Hello and welcome back or to my YouTube channel. My name is Faiza Ramouni and this will be part 6 of the X-Files. Bismillah. Now, we had agreed to go to California, or at least it was in discussion, okay? So if you don't know what I'm talking about, please watch part 5. We had agreed to go to California. Pan says to me, he's like, well, I'd love to, but I just don't have the money for it right now. I was working at this time, and the agreement was that I was getting the job to help. So, of course, Pan sort of nudged it in the direction of, well, can you do the tickets? And I'll cover the hotel and I'll cover miscellaneous, but you get the tickets. I did not like it. I think I've been very clear about this. Like I did not like the dynamic of feeling like I had a provider and then that shifts. And of course, I wanted to see Pan happy, so I agreed to cover the tickets. The round trip tickets, everything, and it comes up to, I think it was about like $300. And I still remember the feeling of paying those $300 and looking over at Pan and being like, ugh. I hated the dynamic of paying something for a guy like that. Then I also, like, even if I was feeling like, ugh, about it, I saw Pan so excited, like, this is so exciting. I always wanted to go to LA, this and that. And that made me happy. Like that I was able and capable of bringing him there to that happy place. But also the fact that he was going to be covering the hotel and miscellaneous throughout the trip. I'm like, well, that seems like a good exchange, right? Again, this is my mentality at this point. Now I would never, ladies, never. So even if I was feeling some type of way about the Masari, I still felt like, oh, alhamdulillah, he's happy and that's what matters. And the year came in well. Let's just keep it on that high. That's my thought. So it's a whole new year, 2014. If you haven't heard what happened New Year's Eve, please, again, go back to part 5. So we have this beautiful New Year's Eve. And now we're going on our first trip of the new year. It felt so exciting. It felt like, gosh, for like the first time in my life, like I was living my life. Like, this is the life. Like, you can go out, you can hang out late, you have the Masari to do, even though I was counting pennies after paying for those tickets, but I was broke. I was still under this impression that, like, here I am with the man that I love, and we're going out of town, and we're celebrating New Year's, and we have a whole new year here. I was wrapped up in that. There were, at least it didn't feel at this time like there were any rules. And for a woman who was fighting rules and trying to set her own, do I have to explain again how orgasmic that felt? The year felt like it was starting off amazing. Like, wow, this is how I imagine a relationship going. This is how I imagine a year starting off like that, with that magic. We have our tickets booked and we fly to LA. The entire flight over, we were ecstatic. Like, we were probably one of the most excited people on that flight. I had already been to LA for work, but Pan had never gone, and it was his dream to always, like, go visit it, experience the nightlife, experience the scene, all of that, sightsee, all that. And even if I had gone to LA, very important to say this, like, even if I had gone to LA, it was always for work. So I always went from the hotel to whatever I had to do, back to the hotel. I never had like a nightlife or life really outside of work and whatever I was doing, because for me, my mentality at this time was like, well, I'm already breaking the rules by being out here in LA. Most girls at that point were getting married, having kids, buying their first home, that type of stuff. I was going back and forth to California trying to pursue a writing dream. If I didn't know a lot about LA, like, I still felt like I'm sharing something with him that he hasn't experienced. And that felt like a first time experience for me with him, because he had always been the one to teach me, and I felt like now I can teach and show him. We are so excited, fly over, land in LAX. When we're in LAX, like, the moment that we're coming down the escalator, Pan's on a 10. He's on a 10, happy, ecstatic. We take the shuttle to get the car, rent the car, go over to the hotel that Pan had booked. The hotel was awful, okay? We stepped into that room and it smelled like it hadn't been washed since 1912. Yeah, it was horrible. And Pan says to me, he's like, I know a way we can make the room smell better. And I'm like, how are you going to do that? And he goes into his luggage and he pulls out this perfume, like this designer perfume. I'm not going to say the designer name because I'm hoping to work with them one day. But for whatever reason, this perfume smelled like khara. And And Pan takes out the perfume and he hands it to me and he's like, starts spraying it around the room. He's like, see how amazing it smells? Every time I smell this, I'm going to smell you. But now, here I am, standing in the middle of this hotel room that smells like chara, with Pan spraying a perfume that also smells like chara, combining with the other chara smell, making an atomic bomb of charaness. It was awful. The whole thing was awful. The smell was awful. The perfume was awful. I still even remember thinking, like, is this what he, like, that's what he wants me to smell like? Ew. Like a sewer? Ugh. Pan could tell that I wasn't like screaming for joy. I mean, I couldn't fake it. I have migraines. I have I'm very, very, very sensitive to smell. And he goes, you know what's funny? My ex would love this perfume. Like, she would have loved it if I brought this perfume to her. She would have been so happy. And I say to him, I'm like, why are we talking about her? Like, why would you bring her up? Of all people, why bring her up? And he goes, we just got here. Let's not ruin a beautiful trip, okay? And when somebody would say something like that, like, don't ruin a good moment. Don't be the one to do this. Don't be the one to do, anybody said that to me. At that moment, that would be the moment I went back into my shell. Like, I would completely alter and become a notorious people pleaser at that moment. Like, I would really become a big ass people pleaser. I didn't want to be the one ruining a good time, the one being problematic, the one that's making a beautiful moment destroyed. Like, I never wanted to be that person. I never wanted to bring chaos or problems to anyone. So when he said that, I was just like, all right, let it go. I let it go. We moved on, and Pan starts making jokes about how the room smells like it belongs in a porno. It felt a little bit like a little bit of a turn off for me, because I'm like, oh my gosh, how would he even know what something like that smells like? And I want you guys to remember this part. This is a very important part to remember, okay? Because when I finally get the courage later on to ask him about this question, you're going to want to remember what I just said to you, okay? So, but at that point, I let it go. Just moved on along. He was laughing about it. Let it go. I let the comment about the porn go. I let the comment about the Gucci sunglasses X go. Instead, we went to go have lunch. And during lunch, Pan is like, oh my gosh, I thought the room was going to be better. And he started like venting about how he doesn't like the room. And you guys already know what my thoughts were on that. And I made that clear there as well. And during lunch, he said something that, again, another thing I let go and didn't act like I was offended by, but I was. He says to me, you know, I thought you would be used to a room like that because you lived in the south side of Chicago. So I tell him, I don't know why you have that perspective. I don't live in like trash. It doesn't smell like that. And he says to me, no, I'm just kidding. But it didn't feel like a joke. Nothing about it felt like a joke. But again, we just moved on along, had the rest of the lunch was, okay, go back to the hotel. We lay down for a little bit, and within like 5 minutes of laying down, I start having an allergic reaction. So my eyes are itching, I'm coughing, I'm sneezing, I have hives all over my back. My chest was breaking out in hives, and Pan had never seen that before. So I go to my bag, take an allergy medicine, try to get myself a little bit better, and he tells me to go wait in the car, which I did. I go and I wait in the car. Pan checks out with the bags, gets a refund for the room, comes into the car, starts going on his phone to find another hotel, and ended up booking it. We go to the hotel, night and day. We ended up going to dinner to some like Persian restaurant, which had phenomenal food. And when we left, we had parked the car and started walking up and down Rodeo Drive. And it was beautiful, you guys. Remember when I told you that I had gone to LA, but I had never done like touristy stuff like that, or just spent the day walking around these beautiful neighborhoods or admiring the shops and stuff like that? I had never done that. It was such a beautiful moment. It felt like everything was peaceful. And I didn't realize until much later, so many years later, guys, so many years later, that that's what I was always looking for. Peace. To have a moment where I didn't have to worry. I didn't have to think for a moment. I could just go out and just exist. That was always something I was searching for. And I didn't realize that in the moments of those pockets of peace that I found, that's what linked me to toxic people, toxic relationships, accepting toxic friendships, toxic family, etc., right? Because I was so used to the little pockets of peace that came in. And when it came in, it was so amazing that I would have done anything to get that fix again. We go back to the hotel, have an amazing night, Next morning, we decide to do more touristy stuff, so we go to the museums and we go to walk the Walk of Fame and look at the stars. The trip, honestly, at that point was going great. I'm embarrassed to say that considering the things that happened before. And as we're walking down the street, Pan gets approached by some guy that says about a bar crawl. Now, I had never heard of something like that. I didn't even know what a bar crawl was. I was like, I don't want to be crawling anywhere, honey. Are you stupid? Pan's like, let me talk to him for a second. So I just sort of stepped back and was looking at the shops around there and letting Pan handle the conversation with the guy. And then I see Pan pull out some cash, hand the guy the cash, and he gets back 2 tickets. And he hole punches the 2 tickets. And I'm like, what is going on? What is this right now? And again, I'm thinking just naively, I don't know what about this guy thinks that I'm going to be going around crawling anywhere. But your girl might be from the south side of Chicago, but she's not going to be on hands and knees at all. And Pan approaches and he's like, oh, I hope that guy didn't just rip me off. And I said, well, about what? What are we doing? And that's when Pan explains to me, well, we're going to do a bar crawl. And then he explains this basically where you get these tickets and you go to different places, different clubs. Never heard of anything like that. So I'm like, oh, okay, that seems cool, I guess, right? And he's like, yeah, of course it's cool because we get to go to different places. We'll listen to different music and drinks are included. So we don't have to worry about spending extra money on drinks. And Pan was much more knowledgeable about these things. So I trusted that he knew what he was talking about. I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds great. Cool. So we go back to the hotel and get ourselves ready that night for the bar crawl, which was going to be starting at 8 p.m. I already know what a lot of Muslims, especially I get a lot of messages like this about Muslims that say, well, you weren't supposed to be doing that. I knew I wasn't supposed to be doing any of this. Like, I like how so many Muslims just lock onto the bar and club and drinking part, but they're not locking onto the whole thing should not have been happening in the first place. And that I was already walking on a very thin line to begin with. But I don't regret any part of this. None. Of course, things are very different today, right? But at that time, you live, you learn, you grow, you teach. Anyway, Pan and I finish getting dressed, get an Uber, and get over to where we're supposed to be meeting the rest of the group. As we turn the corner, a bunch of people are there, all right? And so naturally, we felt not only more comfortable, but we're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a fun time. Pan kept saying to me over and over, you're going to love this, you're going to love this, you've never experienced anything like this. And I was excited. I was so excited. By the way, sorry guys, I keep saying bar crawl. It was actually a club crawl. We get to this club and music's playing, everything's good. You get your card punched and you get a drink, and that's how you spend the time there. And then we went from club to club to club and had all different types of music, all different types of vibe. And then again, you don't have to worry about paying for anything, so you're just kind of getting this punched. And then by the end of when we got to the last club, they had pizza, so everybody was passing around pizza, so nobody got too hungover and everything. And it was like shuffling through a Spotify playlist for me. And I love that because, anyone who knows me knows I love music and I love to hear different types of music. So it was literally like shuffling through my Spotify playlist. And it was fun. We had a lot of fun. So much so that when we got back to the hotel, we didn't end the night. We continued listening to music and hanging out and having fun before we even passed out. I don't even know how we didn't pass out sooner, but we hung out late, passed out. The next morning, I wake up and I'm getting myself ready to shower. I go over to my bag. I'm pulling out my shower supplies. And I notice hanging in my hair that they're my Allah necklace. I used to always wear a necklace with Allah's name here. And the necklace, I guess I hadn't taken it off when we went to the club crawl, that it fell off. But subhanAllah, it was hanging on literally by the strands of my hair. I felt so many things. I felt grateful that alhamdulillah that my hair had caught the necklace that was bought to me by my mom, my dad, and guilty. So guilty. I don't even know how else to say it. Very guilty. Feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm not supposed to be doing this. Oh my God, God must be sending me a sign. You shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be acting this way. Oh guys, it's just awful. It's an awful feeling to be ping-ponged constantly between self-assurance and guilt. My father had passed away at that point 4 years earlier, made me feel even worse about it because I was like, oh my gosh, his ghost must be hanging around being like, oh my God, what a sharmuta, That's what I raised, Muslim girls who choose to date, who choose to live their own life by their own rules. So much guilt. So much guilt. I cannot even tell you. That's like a whole nother series in itself. Muslim girl guilt. And how do you handle it? Of course, I learned to handle it years later. All right. And that was only by finding a happy medium, the gray area that so many people don't believe exists. But that has always been my gift. God has gifted me with a great many things. One of them is seeing the gray area. Everybody sees life black and white. Everything's black and white. My work has proved life is not like that. So there is absolutely a gray area, a middle ground, as I often call it, the Icorus Effect. Okay. And I only found that middle wave, much later, much later. I mean, I'm 40 now, so it took its time. So we go to breakfast, and during breakfast, I had talked to Pan about the necklace, the Allah necklace. And I'm like, I showed him my necklace. I'm like, do you see my Allah necklace? And he's like, yeah. And I said, I woke up this morning, I forgot to take it off. And so I woke up this morning with it hanging on my hair right here. And Pan says to me, well, why were you wearing it in the first place? You knew we were going to a club. Why did you wear that? And I admitted that I had forgotten. Like, I had just been moving so quickly, I didn't remember to take off my Allah necklace. Normally, I would have taken it off, right? I would have just tucked it away or just tucked it underneath so nobody saw it, right? When we were doing haram things. And I tell Pan how I started feeling guilty, like even more so about the Allah necklace and how I felt like a bad Muslim. And it just was eating away at me. Pan said something to me that I did not expect at all. And that was, we don't have to do any of that anymore. We don't have to go do nightlife, no clubs, no bars, no drinking, nothing. We could just enjoy sightseeing and do that type of stuff. And I wasn't expecting that at all. And it did give me comfort. I'm like, I'm fine if we don't have to do that anymore. I don't want to feel this way. I already know what we're doing is wrong. And us being here is wrong. I don't want to push our luck. And this is how I started seeing it at that point. Like, we were pushing our luck, and this was God's way of saying that my faith is hanging on by a string. And I didn't want to ruin that. Pan even said, it's going to help us save money anyway, and we could put money towards more important things. So all of that sounded great to me. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Let's do that. So we decided to go back to the hotel and get on jogging clothes or just kind of casual wear so we could go hiking to the Hollywood sign. Hike up to the Hollywood sign. And then after we were done with the Hollywood sign, we went to do a tour that was talking about Hollywood movies and how they're made, etc. And the whole time, Pan's just looking over him. He keeps making this face and by the end, I'm like, babe, what? And he goes, did you hear what they were saying about writers, about how important writers are, about how rare that talent is? You have a talent. Don't let it die. Keep going with it. My head's getting bigger and bigger. And I'm like, yeah. And it all felt good because I started wondering again, there was a back and forth of whether or not I felt comfortable with Pan being supportive of what I had initially started doing when he met me, which was writing. And then kind of shifting back and forth from there's no reason to be writing. Think about the community. Think about our respect. Think about reputation. Then write, but don't write about this, but write, but think about XYZ, but go ahead and do it. So there was constantly a back and forth. And anytime he ever gave a thumbs up, I was on cloud 9 about it because that's all I ever wanted to do anyway. I just wanted to write. I'm going to stop the video really quickly to say, if you're not yet subscribed to my channel, please make sure to click that subscribe button and make sure to turn on your notifications bell so you don't miss part 7 and 8, which will be posted right after this video, along with any future posts. I mean, why would you want to miss me, stupid? What's wrong with you? So we do the tour, come back, and the next day we spend our last full day in LA. And that day was pretty much just going to restaurants, buying some gifts from the gift shop, and spending time at the pool at the hotel. The moment we touched down in Chicago, Pan goes into motion. Pan makes sure that he's working every day, that he's investing in his businesses, that he's networking, going to different events. And regardless of the fact of how much he was working, he was still making time to come pick me up, to come take me out, to take me for a ride around the block, to go get a coffee, for a drive downtown, just to hang out, just to bring me flowers, just to bring me a gift, just to bring me a smile. He always made the time. Always. I loved the fact that I was still, and regardless of how busy he got, I was still a priority to him. I was still a priority, and he was making the time no matter how little or how much he could give. He was there. It was the first time I had zero doubts. I mean, zero. No little lingering, I don't know, nothing. No doubts about who I was going to be with. I started believing that the past was just, bad circumstances, and this was who Pan really was. LA had served as a reset button for us, and I loved it. I was like, this is where I want to be. I'm going to live in this light that we just reset, and everything's great. Everything's great right now. So we lived in that for a while. And for months, things were very good. I mean, very, very good. It doesn't mean that we didn't have our fights here and there. It doesn't mean that we didn't have our disagreements. It doesn't mean that Pan's jealousy didn't, pop up. But it did not go back to what it was in the beginning. And remember, everything I did was to make sure that he never went back to what that monster I saw. I started believing that Pan was right, that all that darkness that he had shown me in the beginning was just circumstantial, just a rough patch that we went through, and now we were smooth sailing all the way through. I believed that. One day we had gone mini golfing. It was the first time that we had met up with Hannah, Ryan, Nadine, and Masari, since New Year's Eve. So we were all excited, having a great time. It seemed like it for everybody. The year had started, months had passed, everything seemed to settle in, and we were all in a good place. That's what it seemed. And so much so that we had decided to do a trip to Vegas. We'd all wanted to go to Vegas, and we had agreed, nobody had ever gone before, and so we agreed that we would all try to do a trip together. Not try, that was our intention, to do a trip together. We're all just so excited about it. I look over at Hannah, and Hannah's not smiling. Hannah's not excited. Hannah's not thrilled. Hannah's not jumping up and down like Nadine and I. Hannah's just stern-faced. Hannah, with her eyes, motions for us to meet her in the bathroom, and so we did, and admits that she's not excited about a Las Vegas trip because it wouldn't be Ryan paying for it. It would be Hannah having to pay for it. This is where we found out that Ryan was not working, he was working here and there, but that he had lost all his motivation to try to get financially stable and instead had become very comfortable depending on Hannah to go out to work and make ends meet. So even if there was 1 month where he can come up with rent, for the next 5 to 6, Hannah was having to cover it. Ryan wasn't really making Hannah feel safe. Hannah felt like she always had to be working. She was exhausted from work. She had a bad temper constantly because she was always at work and having to deal with stress. She's telling us, you guys, I would love to go on this trip and I would love to experience something like that. But unfortunately, I don't have a husband that's working right now. I don't have a husband that's committed to work. I have a husband who's being lazy, who's not doing anything. And so I can't afford that. Of course, Nadine and I understood. Now, here's the truth. Again, a lot of men don't want to hear and a lot of women don't want to admit to. Women value a man who provides. And the moment that a woman is forced into that dynamic where she has to carry the weight alone, something in that relationship shifts. The attraction starts to fade. And it's not even about money, because a lot of people go straight to money. It's not about money, it's about protection. A woman doesn't feel protected anymore. She doesn't feel safe. So when the effort and that stability is gone, a woman's interest fades. It fades. All right. So this should tell every man out there, get on your shit. I want to say that especially because we went from 0.1% of male viewership on this channel to 3.3 in the past 2 weeks. And hello, you big old stupids. You have got a lot to learn here, guys, and you can learn a lot simply from reading the comments section alone. Women will tell you a lot in that comment section. But whatever they're not going to tell you, I hope you're listening to what I'm saying here. Get on your shit. A woman's biology, her nervous system, everything in us is wired for safety. To feel safe, to feel protected by our man. Not to be going out and working 24/7 so he can sit around and play video games. When that safety's missing, women go into survival mode. So when you wonder why a woman can't be with a broke, lazy guy, it's because her nervous system cannot handle a broke man. And Hannah was feeling that deeply. But I realized that it wasn't just Hannah who that had faded for. Also Nadine. Nadine was also dealing with a guy who was too lazy to work consistently, and therefore she had to get a job and she had to be working a lot more overtime hours than she wanted to because Masari didn't have Masari. Ciro Masari. It was a hard adjustment for Hannah and Nadine, and I didn't know anything about it until that point. Nothing. I didn't know what the circumstance was. I didn't know what the situation really was until that moment, hearing it from the women. And when I heard Hannah say, that's how these guys are. 1 minute they're up and the next minute for months they're down for years and they never get back up. They'll wait for you to get yourself up. As I've said before, birds of a feather flock in shitty ass togetherness. And all I was thinking was, wow, is that Pan too? Is Pan like that? Because I'm already seeing signs like that. He told me to go get a job. He told me to pay for the tickets. He told me to pay for the... But we also went to LA and now he's back and he's working. And he hasn't asked me for a dime. I don't pay for any dates anymore. I don't go half on anything. I don't have to pay for anything. And they could see it too. They could see that this was I was like, uh-oh. Because Nadine said, oh, but that's not Pan. Pan's not like that though. Don't worry about it. Pan's not like that. And I said I was going to be very honest throughout the series, no matter how it made me look, okay? And so I would be lying to you guys if I didn't tell you the truth, which is that I knew that those signs already existed in Pan. I knew that the things that they were saying, I was like, well, yeah, he did that. Oh, yeah, he did this too. Oh, yeah, he did say something like that. Because they were going on explaining stories, and every single one they were explaining, Pan had done that. He had said that. He had acted that way. So I'm sitting there thinking to myself, oh, I hope that Pan's not like that. But I knew Pan was like that. I had already seen signs that Pan was like that. But at that moment, what I was holding on to that just kept pushing that logic and that truth further and further back was the beautiful trip we just took to LA. His new intentions. His actions were speaking a hell of a lot louder than his words. I mean, he could say anything, but you couldn't change the fact that he was getting up and going to work and being consistent. We ended up reassuring Hannah that, like, don't worry about the trip. We're not doing that anytime soon. When Ryan gets on his 2 feet and he's financially better off, you tell us when, and we'll talk about the trip then. So that became the agreement with us. We wouldn't talk about it again, so the guys wouldn't get too inspired to start doing something that, again, Hannah was going to have to pay her part for with Ryan. So we go back out, have a good time, everything's good. And when the night comes to a close, Pan and I are driving home, or he's driving me home, and he starts talking about the fact that he feels that there's something wrong with the dynamic between Hannah and Ryan. And I say to him, why do you say that? And he starts saying, I don't know, something just feels off. And I start noticing that what he's trying to do is kind of bait out from me what happened between Nadine, Hannah, and I in the bathroom. Because we were there for quite a while, I will say. We were there for like half an hour. It's the longest bathroom break. No, I didn't share anything, but Pan just kept insisting, like, I don't know, something seems off about them. Now, he was validated when a few months after that, we found out that Hannah and Ryan were getting a divorce. This was not as common in the community at this time. Okay, so any situation like this was drastic, guys. It was very, very hard, not just on the couple, but the family involved, the community, because everybody would talk. Everybody had their opinions about things. Very hard for Hannah and Ryan. And she even stepped away from the group. And I don't blame her because it must have been such a constant reminder for her. So she steps away from the group, and Ryan says that he's going to be moving away with family. Ryan's getting all his stuff out of their place. And at one point he calls Pan and he says if he can come help him get the rest of his stuff loaded to the truck. And so Pan and I are together at this point. So Pan drives over, but he drives and parks and tells me to stay in the car while he goes inside to help Ryan with, packing the stuff. After a while, Pan comes back to the car. Pan says to me, we can never let that happen to us. No matter what, we can never let that happen to us. And I said, well, that's in our hands. That's up to you and me. And we have to work really hard so that never happens. And of course I wanted to go into detail, like keep on your job and be consistent, because that's what happened to Ryan. But I didn't want to tell him Ryan's financial position just yet, because again, he didn't know about that. Ryan had made that very private, making it look like whatever Hannah was making was money that Ryan was making. So people were none the wiser. The divorce shook Pan deeply to the core. I mean, you could see it. He was very different after that divorce. Even more so at this point, he and Masadi had come together, and they were both working on making sure that their financial position changed, that they were on their shit, and they were really working. I mean, they were very, very committed. I still remember even Nadine and I talking and being like, wow, the guys are on their shit. This is great. So we had this like position where we were like, it was horrible what happened to Hannah. And then we were also like, well, but thank God I brought them on track, and they're doing what they need to be doing even more so now. So Nadine was on cloud 9 because, again, Masadi's starting to move and starting to get on his shit, and they're working together now. Hannah and Masadi are starting to do things together to try to get their things off the ground. And so it felt good. The next day, Ryan leaves town completely, and the guys had gone to say their goodbyes and everything. And when Pan came back, he was very, very broken by it, very broken. And so he suggested we get a hotel, and we just hung out. We watched movies, and I could tell it was bothering Pan. I mean, deeply, deeply, deeply bothering him. He was broken by it. It was not only sad to see his friend go, but it had also instilled a fear in both of them that it was like, that can happen to us. And it was very hard for them to adjust to that. And it was very hard for Pan too. He was very, he kept saying it over and over, like, don't leave, don't let that happen to us. Make sure that we stay together, make sure that we fix things. So that had become his Achilles heel in a sense. And so my job was just to comfort him. That's all I wanted to do, to comfort him, to make him know that I was there, that I wasn't going to leave, that I had no intentions of it. And at that point, as I sat there, rubbing his head or comforting him. I meant that. I had no intention of leaving. I had no intention of going anywhere else besides there, and to make sure that we were in a good place. Masadi reaches out and he's like, I know it's late, but let's hang out, go by the lake, ride some divvy bikes, do some fun things. And Pan goes, well, can I bring my girl? And Masadi's like, yeah, of course, obviously bring your girl. I'm bringing Nadine. So Nadine and Masadi drive from the burbs over to the city, and we meet up at a certain spot, grab some divvy bikes, and start riding around the city. We rode everywhere. We rode to Navy Pier, to the Adler Planetarium, into the city, everywhere. And as we're doing so, we're starting to see like the guys are letting loose and smiling and happy again. And that was really all Nadine and I wanted. But we were also, again, sad that they were down, but happy that they were up at the same time. So we're like, yeah, sorry that they're sad, but we're happy that they're up in the sense financially working on their shit. So we're riding bikes. We find a place to drop off our divvy bikes, which was by the lake. And so we decide to do a walk by the lakefront. Girls are in the front, guys are in the back. Nadine starts telling me about how she relates a lot to Hannah and how she was walking around with this fear that the same thing that happened with Ryan was going to happen with Masadi, which was he was working and he had a lot of passion. Everything seemed great. And then he would have the crash for as long as it took him. And at that point, that's when they got the intolerable, angry, violent individual. And this was the first time I'd ever heard Nadine talk about Masadi getting violent with her. All right, putting his hands on her. Nadine was saying, I've seen him do this before. I've seen him get on his shit. I've seen him go, and then we start traveling, and money's great, and I get really comfortable, and I feel safe. And then he does it all over again. Wallah Faiza, he does this all over again. Nadine was not feeling safe. She was constantly living in a state of fear. And I admitted to her this first time. I'm like, listen, I would be lying to you if I didn't tell you I felt the same way. Nadine goes, why? What's going on? Tell me. And let me tell you guys, I wanted to pour my whole soul out and tell her everything that was going on. But I also could not say it out loud. So all I said was, no, just a lot of what you said, it just seems like sometimes he's here, sometimes he's not. I did not want it to feel real just yet because everything felt like such a high and I wanted to give the high a chance. So I almost adamantly refused to get to that level. So I'll listen. This was my mentality. I was like, I'll listen to Nadine and I can relate to a lot and it's getting me a little worried, but I gotta continue to live in that positivity that everything's good and Pan is good and things are well. Especially because in that moment, I felt safe with Pan. I didn't feel unsafe with him at that moment. I felt like, should I have? No. But everything that Nadine was saying and everything that had happened with her and Masadi made me think, gosh, that can happen with Pan. And a lot of that stuff has already happened. He already did something like that to me. Wow, Masadi broke your nose? Wow, well, Pan broke my hand. Wow, Masadi pushed you into a wall? Wow, Pan did sort of the same thing. So there was the truth and what I refused to see. Constantly. I was terrified of everything that was said because the timeline, the ups, the downs, all of it was very much in alignment with how Pan was. It felt like I was in how Nadine called that calm before the storm, right? I felt like I was in that position. Like I was in the calm before the storm. I was terrified of what might come next. Terrified. But holding on again to that hope that, well, things are good now and I'm going to sit in the now. And I just prayed that we would be the exception. And I would never have expected what was coming.